Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here and welcome back. This is a podcast and a movement dedicated to giving you what you need to step up more fully as a man. And that's actually what I want to talk with you about today. Not the stepping up as a man necessarily, although we'll get into that a bit, but creating a movement. I want to talk with you about this today because, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need more men in this battle, the battle to reclaim and restore masculinity. And I can't do it on my own. Of course, we've got some huge leverage with what we're doing here with the podcast, and we're reaching millions and millions of people throughout the world. But there's more to be done, and there's more opportunity to serve and to step up and to lead effectively as men. And so that's number one. Number two, a bunch of you guys are asking me for advice on how to start something similar to what we're doing here. Now, there used to be a point in time where I was intimidated by that, concerned with that, threatened even to a degree with that. But I've since grown out of that. A lot of that has to do with my confidence level and, of course, the success that we've been able to develop and foster here over the past 6 years. But it's also the abundance mentality that I've been able to hone and refine and create and embrace, where I'm not threatened by men who want to start things similar to what we're doing here. In fact, I consider those guys advocates in the work that we need to do. And you know as well as I do, there's a lot of it. So we're going to talk about some tips, some commonly overlooked things, and some strategies and ideas that I think will help you get in the right mindset and get you going. Things that I've learned over the past 6 years of creating a thriving movement that not only has impacted positively hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, but has created a very lucrative career for me as well. And they aren't mutually exclusive, by the way. I know there's a lot of people out there who think, man, shouldn't I just be doing this out of the goodness of my heart? And contrary to some of that belief, it is possible to do things like this out of the goodness of your heart and also, again, make a lucrative, profitable career out of it. And isn't that what you guys want? Don't you want to do meaningful work and get paid well to do it? There isn't any contradiction with that. I've got to put food on the table just like you do. I have experiences and things that I want to create for myself and opportunities and investments I want to make. And if it's done through meaningful work, valuable work that helps not just me, but society and those like you who are tuning in, then that's a win-win. So before I get into that, I do want to mention very quickly, if you're watching this, by the way, on video, you can see my hands are kind of a mess. I've got paint all over my hands because I've been painting the barn and the garage. So you'll just have to bear with the paint because I do other stuff outside of just yapping, flapping my gums behind this microphone. Although I like doing this better, I like being outside and painting and using my hands and building and stuff like that too. What I was going to say before I got distracted there is that we are bringing our events back this fall. So we've got our legacy event, which is our father-son event. It's for men and their boys between the ages of 8 to 15. We have 20 spots total for that event, and I believe we've already registered 11 men with their sons. So if you're interested in running that event, that's going to be September. I should have wrote this down. I didn't write this down. I believe it's September 23rd through the 26th. You can look if you go to orderofman.com/main event, orderofman.com/main event. I think I want to say we have about 9 spots of the 20 left. Again, I believe that's September 23rd through the 26th. Go look at the page if you're interested, because we're going to give you the tools, the resources, everything you need to do to forge a tighter bond with your son and help usher him into manhood and masculinity. So that's that's a legacy event. Then October 7th through the 10th, we have our main event. That's a 100-man event. So we have 100 guys out here to my property. We've got a campsite located on the property. You can stay or you can get an Airbnb, but we're going to spend about 3 days talking, conversing, building up camaraderie, sharing best practices, learning how to plan out our day and our week and our quarter and achieve success. We're going to be doing physical fitness stuff. We're going to be training some jujitsu and lifting, and maybe we'll get the bows out. I've got some other good plans, some surprises worked into the plan. We've got 71. Last I checked, 71 of the 100 spots already filled. So there's less than 30. There's like 28, 29 spots left. So if you want to come to the main event, October 7th through the 10th, then make sure you get registered at orderofman.com/main event. And Maine is spelled M-A-I-N-E. Maine is in the state. So orderofman.com/main main event. orderman.com/legacy, orderman.com/main event. Go check it out. Get registered now today. I imagine we'll have that filled up maybe this weekend, maybe early next week, but get it taken care of. All right. Enough of that. We want to see you in the fall. Hopefully we can make it so you can come out here, and we'll love to have you. But on to what I really wanted to talk with you about today, which is creating a thriving movement. Again, there was a time where I was intimidated by people who would reach out and say they wanted to start things similar to what I was doing, where I'd, jump on Instagram or the socials and I'd see some new men's movement pop up, and I didn't like it, but I do now because, there's a lot of reasons. I feel like we've built this to a point where I have the confidence not to be worried about that, but I also see that you and other people are going to be talking about masculinity differently than I am, and you're going to reach different people. There's almost 8 billion people on the planet now. We've reached millions and millions, but that means we have billions of people, quite literally, that we have not even remotely touched or influenced in any way. So that leaves a lot of room on the table for you to create something similar to what we're doing here. And it's important that more and more of us talk about masculinity. Now, I say in a different way. Different is important, although there's a lot of similar thread lines that we talk about and address. And I feel like as long as we're all on the same page with the basic fundamentals of what it means to be a man, then we can approach it at different angles and reach different people and help each other and be advocates for each other. There's guys that I've personally coached. They've hired me to coach them and to walk them through what we do here so they can do something similar. And there's people that I know who, they'll call me or they'll shoot me a message. And these are people I know and friends where I can just have, a conversation or answer a few questions here and there for them. I'm not intimidated by that. So if you're in the position where you feel like you'd really like to start something like this, where it's meaningful to you, it's purpose driven, and you want to make a lucrative career, or maybe just even a hobby, then here's 5 tips to help you do that. So number 1 is just get started. All right. I hear from a lot of guys who are like, Ryan, I want to do this thing, and I just don't really know where to start. You do know where to start. The first thing you need to do is you need to start talking about it on social media. Then you need to get a website. Then you need to get some social media pages up. Maybe it's putting some videos out there. Maybe it's getting the website up and running. Perhaps you want to start a podcast. You know where to start. I think when guys say, I don't know where to start, they don't know the best place to start. And I think even that is a bit of an excuse not to get started. There is no best place to start. There is no one way to do it. You just have to start. And if that means you're going to put out a video every day or every week, you're going to set up your website, you're going to start and launch the podcast, you're going to learn as you go. All right, you're not going to have everything 100% figured out. I still, 6 years after doing this, which is not a lot of time, by the way, because there's people who've been doing this significantly longer than I have, I still don't entirely know what I'm doing. And just when I think I have it figured out, some sort of wrench gets thrown in the system. The algorithm changes, or there's some new book or some new trend or some new thing in society that I need to be aware of, and I need to change and adapt and evolve. So 6 years into doing this thing, I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. I'm still adapting. I'm still growing. In fact, we've got some really good plans over the next several months that are going to, I won't say revolutionize what we're doing, but they're going to be an enhancement to what we're doing. And we're going to start having little branches of masculinity and teaching young men and different things that I feel like are important that I didn't initially acknowledge. And that's what's going to be like for you. You're not going to initially acknowledge or even recognize everything that it could possibly be. Now, you might look at what I'm doing, or somebody like my friend and mentor, Sean Whalen, or Garrett White is another guy, Bedros Koulian, Steve Weatherford, Andy Frisilla, Jocko. I mean, look, the guys I've had on the podcast, right? And we all kind of operate in the same circles and same groups and talk about the same types of things from different perspectives. So you might look at these guys and think, well, I want to do it exactly like that. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but yeah, just fine. Good. Go do it. If you see something I'm doing, you're like, man, I really like that idea. Then do that. Just start there. And you're going to figure it out as you go. But you have to start. If you just wait and you just wait for things to be perfect and you want everything to be just right, and you spend a lot of time with a notepad or just contemplating and thinking about, well, what if I did this and what if I did that? Now you're in paralysis by analysis. And the longer you do that, the longer it's going to take you to actually launch and impact people's lives. I often am asked, what is my greatest regret? I don't really play the regret game. I mean, there's things, sure, I wish I would have done differently, but I'm happy with where I am in my life. But I will tell you, one of the things is I wish I would have started earlier, because I had these types of ideas, not in 2015. It was like 2010, 2011, 2012. And I often wonder how much further down the track, how many more men we will have impacted had I started 2, 3, 4, 5 years earlier. And that's going to be you. When you start and you get the thing going and you start to see some success, one of your regrets is going to be that you didn't start earlier. So listen to that, be aware of that, and start right now. And then you'll develop it, you'll hone it, you'll fine tune it, you'll start taking different paths, different veins. In fact, a lot of what we talk about now is completely unrecognizable from what it was when I started in 2015. I think the very first blog post I did was, how to throw a baseball effectively, which is good. I mean, every man should know how to throw a baseball, sure. But it is not in line with what we talk about now, because that's changed, that's evolved. I think I did a blog post or a podcast or something on the 6 simple machines. Again, you should know what simple machines are, but that's not really it's not even all what we talk about now. It's changed. It's evolved as I've evolved, as I found things that I want to talk about and things that I don't want to talk about. And I move towards the things I do, and things evolve from there. So that's point number 1, is just start. Okay. Number 2, don't copy me. All right. Look, here's my logo. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, you can see the logo. You got Order of Man, Protect, Provide, Preside. You got the crossed axes. You got OM. Okay. You can see the hat. You can see this. You can see my shirt. You can see the way I communicate, the way I talk, the things I do. Don't copy that. And it's not because I'm worried about you knocking off what we're doing, because you can't do it like me. Not that you're not capable of it. Actually, no, that is what it is. You're not capable of doing it like me, just like I'm not capable of doing it like you. All right. You're different. I'm different. I'm a weird guy. You're a weird guy. Just embrace it. Own it. I'm so much better at being me than you are at being me. So be yourself. Now, there's things that we do. There's principles. There's foundational elements of what we do that you should mimic because they work, right? A podcast works. We know that. A podcast dedicated to men works. You know that. I know that with 100% certainty. How? Because we're doing it. So we know. So you don't have to question whether or not a podcast is going to work. Now, are you going to use the same intro music, the same introduction? Are you going to talk about the same subjects? Are you going to present in the same way that I do? I mean, you might try. Again, I'm not worried about you knocking me off. I'm worried about you feeling like a poser and throwing in the towel too soon because you feel like you have this imposter syndrome. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're impersonating me. Why would you want to do that? Now, I get the draw. The reason to do it is because you see this proven formula of success and you think, well, if I just do it just like that. I remember early in this movement, somebody had reached out to me and they said that they wanted to start a podcast or a website called Order of Gentlemen. And I messaged back. I'm like, look, bro, like if you want to create Order of Gentlemen, I mean, who am I to stop you? I've got these things copyrighted and trademarked and all that. There might be some sort of legal options I can take there, but like, why would you want to create like that's the same thing? No, it's gentleman, not man. No, it's the same, guys. So don't plagiarize. That's the better way of saying it, not copy. Don't plagiarize. Don't knock off other people's shit. Look for the basic foundational principles like podcasting, being hyper consistent on social media, talking about these particular subjects. These are the foundational principles. Having the battle plan, having merchandise, having events, having the brotherhood like we have, the Iron Council. Those are the foundational principles. But then don't go and call it, like Copper Council or that sounds stupid, but you know what I'm saying? Like, don't plagiarize. It's not effective. It doesn't work. You're going to feel like a poser. You're going to feel like a loser, and you kind of are being a loser. And it's just not going to work. Be you. Be uniquely you. Now, sometimes that's going to take time. There was a lot of organizations that I followed. I talked about Sean Whalen earlier, where, I mimicked a lot of what he did and what other people did, maybe a little too closely to begin with. But I realized, fortunately, very quickly, and he shared this with me very quickly, that I should take what works, but do it in my own way, put my own unique spin on it. And as I put my own unique spin on it, it's no surprise now that that's where I actually started to gain the traction. I tuned out. In fact, I unfollowed a lot of what these other organizations were doing initially because I didn't want to be influenced by it, because I was, and I wanted to do it my own way. So I unfollowed, I stopped tuning in, I stopped getting their newsletter, and I just went my own way, and it worked. Not all of it, some of it. A large portion of it worked and some didn't. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But it worked when I did it my own way. So do it your own way. Find your own voice. Tune out exactly from what other people are doing. Don't plagiarize. Look at what they're doing, the foundational principles, and implement those things. Number 3 is know your lines. Now, as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about today, I was thinking about knowing your line. I'm not talking about what you should say and how you should say it. That's not the lines I'm talking about. Okay. The lines I'm talking about are your lines in the sand. What are you going to talk about? What are you not going to talk about? What will you stand for? What won't you stand for? And what are you willing to be the bad guy about? Because here's the deal. When you start something like this and you put yourself out in public, initially it's going to be your family and friends. And they may not directly say this to your face, but they're going to laugh at you. They're going to mock you. They're going to ridicule you. They're going to make light and poke at what you're doing. That all is to be expected. And if you don't expect that, you should. I'm telling you right now, that's going to happen. They may not get right in your face and tell you you're an idiot, but they're thinking it. Because I had people that are close to me in my own personal life who thought that. And I know that because they've shared that with me. Oh, Ryan, I couldn't believe that you'd leave your financial planning practice and you'd start this other thing. And I just thought it would fizzle out and fade out. And I thought it was stupid or ridiculous and nobody would listen. And it was a dumb idea. They said that to me now. So they were thinking that at the time. Well, they don't think that now. But you're going to piss people off. All right. You're going to have your family members and friends who are going to poke at you. And then you're going to have strangers who are going to be pissed off by what you're doing. They're threatened by what you're saying. Or simply they don't agree, but they're not mature enough to handle a disagreement or even consider that maybe somebody sees it differently than them in a mature, rational, level-headed manner. So what do? They lash out like my 5-year-old. They throw temper tantrums. They call other people, poo-poo heads and stuff like that, like my 5-year-old does. I mean, that's what these guys are doing. When people, strangers who I've never met, will message me and they'll sling insults. They'll call me names. They'll just poke and prod. I'm like, man, you're like a 5-year-old and your vocabulary actually isn't very much better than my 5-year-old, but that's what's going to happen. And you're going to piss a lot of people off. And if you're not okay with that, you're going into the wrong thing. All right. If you don't want people to be pissed, like go sell ice cream to people. That's the only thing I can think of that isn't going to piss people off. Everything else is going to piss people off. So you can cower and you can hide and you can shrink and you can worry about how everybody is going to feel and what if somebody's offended. Yeah, people are going to be offended. I say things every day and I don't set out to offend people, but I say things every day that people find offensive. And I'm okay with that. And I've also had a lot of guys who are like, man, Ryan, every time you used to share things, I used to get so pissed off and I thought you were a moron and a jerk and everything else. And the more I think about it, and the more I listen and the more I tune in, and the more I hear what you're saying, it's actually pretty true. And I've implemented this stuff in my life, but I had to be willing to rub people the wrong way. And so what are your lines in the sand? And if you don't have them and you want to please everybody, well, that's not going to work. Somebody asked me, because I made a post about this on Instagram. By the way, follow me on Instagram because that's where I'm most active and I'm very active over there. So I'll communicate with you guys. It's at Ryan Mickler. But the guy on Instagram said something to the effect of, is it better to niche down? I think it is, because if you go so broad and so wide, it's boring. It's mundane. It's monotonous. It's already been shared. If I'll make a post about men, a lot of people will chime and say, well, this applies to women too. Sure. Yeah, of course. Because at the end of the day, I'm talking about being a good person, but I'm talking to men. So the terms I use, the words I use, the analogies I share, the way I communicate, the assertive nature of it is going to appeal more generally to men. And I do it like that on purpose. So should you niche down? Yes, you should niche down. Because I don't want to be this milquetoast, bland, boring guy who, everybody's happy with, but nobody actually really knows. So the 5 people that listen to me are very happy. No, I'd rather reach millions and millions and millions of people and have even hundreds of thousands of those pissed off. But That's a better ratio than getting to 5 people and them all being satisfied with you. Now, I want to reach millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people on the planet. And I know that if I'm going to do that, that some people are going to dislike me. And it's stupid stuff too. It's like, yeah, I don't like the way your beard looks. I don't like your hat. I don't like the speed or the pace at which you talk. Crazy stuff. And then there's more serious stuff, like the views I have on feminism, for example, or what it actually means to be a man, or transgenderism. And that pisses people off. Yep, that's my line in the sand. I made a post, speaking of Instagram, the other day about these little crocheted, they're little crocheted penises is what they are. And whoever's making these things made them for transgender children. So they felt like they had the right. Well, you don't have the right anatomy. That's why you'd have to even crochet that. It's despicable. It's disgusting. And I had a lot of people say, hey, bravo for standing up and being bold. And I had a lot of people say, well, Ryan, I can't believe you would talk about this, and you should be more sensitive. And if it was your kid, no, this is my line in the sand. And if you don't like it, you can do one of a few things. You can ignore it and stick around and enjoy the things that you do like or make you feel comfortable. You can complain about it. I guess that's an option. That's what you're doing. Or you can get the hell out of here. And that's fine too. I don't care. People will always announce, you'd share that, I'm going to leave. Yeah, go ahead. I don't care. I didn't even know you were here in the first place. But you have to be willing to be bold and assertive and have lines drawn in the sand and talk about the things you want to talk about in the way that you want to talk about, knowing that not everybody's going to see it the same way as you. And some people are going to be pissed because they're immature little babies. Deal with it. All right. But you got to know the lines in the sand. It's very, very important. And then niching down with that and everything else. Number 4, don't quit. Don't quit, guys. Let me throw this caveat in here. Don't quit as long as there's still enthusiasm and excitement about it. So let me share a quick story. A lot of you guys have heard this story. I had been doing financial planning for roughly 8-9 years. And I had started Order of Man in 2015. And so I was doing my financial planning practice that I owned during my regular hours. And then I was doing Order of Man in the morning, lunch break, in the evening. And Order of Man started to grow and gradually take over some time with my financial planning practice. And I remember one day in particular, I get a text or a phone call on my phone, and I grab my phone and I look at it, and I just remember just thinking, I do not want to talk with this person. And it had nothing to do with that client. It had nothing to do with that individual. I just didn't want to have the conversation. I was so sick and tired of talking about money and debt and investments and the stock market and real estate. I just didn't want to talk about it anymore. And my clients hired me as a fiduciary. It was my responsibility. I was obligated, legally obligated, to do what was in my client's best interest. And at that point, I realized I'm no longer doing what's in my client's best interest. And I'm going to move from the financial planning practice to Order of Man full-time. And I ended up selling my financial planning practice, and I had to call every one of my clients and tell them what I was doing and how it was all going to work and the transition. And it ended up working out well. The reason I share that with you is because there actually is a time and place to quit, contrary to popular opinion. Oh, you should never quit. Don't quit. Never quit. No, there's times where you should quit. If your heart and mind are no longer in it, you should consider quitting. But you got to be careful, because sometimes your mind will deceive you. Your heart will deceive you. You'll have a bad day and think, well, I guess this is just not meant to be. No, it just means you had a bad day. And we all have shitty days. Okay, that's just the part of it. And some people say, well, I guess if I have a bad day or things don't go right, then I'm on the wrong path. No, it just means you're a human, and sometimes life sucks. Even if you're on the right path, you're on the perfect path, and I am. I feel like I'm on the right path right now. But that doesn't mean that life is always sunshine and rainbows. Really, what it means is that in spite of it being a shitty day, in fact, today is one of those days for me. In spite of it, I've found meaning and satisfaction, fulfillment in that suffering, in that pain. And pain is the price. It's the price that you're going to have to pay. And are you willing to pay it or not? Are you willing to suffer? Probably not physically, but mentally, emotionally, every day. Roller coaster for me, ups and downs and highs and lows, success and failure and everything else in between. But my heart is still in it. My mind is still in it. I'm still excited about it. I'm still engaged about it. It still has my attention. And because I'm still passionate about what I'm doing, it's not time to quit. But if there ever came a point in time where I was exhausted with it, I didn't find value in it, and it was more of a chore, and it became a trend, that's the point. Because outside of that, don't ever quit. Just maintain focus, keep going, make small incremental progress as you go. You're going to eventually win. You're going to figure some things out. You're going to lose and succeed and fail and win and trial and error. And some things are going to work and other things aren't. And you're going to start to navigate through this path. You're going to find, I had a neighbor who came and knocked on my door the other day, and he said, "Hey, Ryan, we're going to build a snowmobile trail down the lower end of our property, and it butts up to yours. And I'm wondering if we can cut that trail through this part of your property and meet up with the bigger snowmobile trail." And I said, "Well, yeah, let's go take a look and see what we're looking at here." There's a point to this story, by the way. And so Tony and I were walking through the thing, and none of it was cleared or cut. And it's springtime here in Maine. And so everything's just lush and green and filled. And there's trees and shrubs and bushes and ticks everywhere. So we're walking through and we're trying to like figure out, okay, well, we went this way and this part got swampy. And so we kind of backtracked a little bit and went this other way. And that way had a bunch of thorns and thistles. And so we ducked under some things and went around some others and moved this way, backtracked a couple of times. And we kind of worked our way through the path that we thought would work. Well, this is a perfect analogy for business. This goes back to actually point number one, just starting. You just got to pick a starting point. We were on his property, very well maintained, and it was all mowed. And we got to the edge where it was forest and thicket. And he's like, "I don't know, let's just go right here." That's exactly right. Let's just go right here and see where it takes us and figure out if this is the best spot. And we navigated, and it took us a little time. We got scratched up. I picked a few ticks off me during the adventure, but we figured it out because we went. If we never went, we just sat on the sideline, we never would have figured it out. And so don't quit. Just keep working through. Just keep finding your ways, and eventually you're going to find a way, and it's going to work for you. Okay. All right. Last point here I want to make with you is that you need to experiment. And this kind of ties into what I was just talking about. You need to experiment. I call it tuition payments. I learned that from my friend Pete Roberts. So many kids will spend $50, $60, $80, $200,000 on schooling or more. And they'll come out of school and they'll be, they'll have all this education, no practical application necessarily, but they'll have the education, and they're okay with strapping themselves with, like I said, $50, $60, $100, $200,000 worth of debt with no real knowledge of how it's going to work in the real world. Well, what if you did the same thing with your business or a movement and decided that you're going to pay tuition, but you're going to apply it practically, pragmatically? There's things that I've done that have cost me money. I've bought too much merchandise or not enough merchandise, or I one time created a shirt that was very similar to another company's, and they came after me and I pulled those shirts out. And so I had like 200 or 300 shirts that were basically just dirty rags I could use around the house. And I've experimented with different elements of the podcast, and some really resonated with people and others just flopped. And so I pivoted and changed and adjusted. And so if you come at it with the mentality of not everything has to be perfect, but you're just testing the waters. I know a lot of you guys know, since we were talking about events earlier, our main event and our legacy event, that the very first uprising event, which we probably will do one of those in 2022, so stay tuned for that. But our very first uprising event, we didn't have a single person register. And I had put a sizable deposit on a lodge that we were going to be doing it at. Well, I lost some money. And then I went back to the drawing board and I figured out how to tell a better story, how to articulate a message that would resonate, a compelling reason for men to show up. And we sold the first one out. Or I should say the second iteration out, because the first one flopped. Not a single soul registered. The next event, we had 20 guys there. And we call ourselves the Terrible 20. because I was willing to experiment and I was willing to put my money where my mouth was. A lot of guys will talk tough and tell themselves how great they are and wonderful, and they're willing to do all these things. And then when push comes to shove, they won't back it up with their mouth or their actions, or excuse me, not their mouth, their money or their actions. You got to be willing to do that. You got to put your money where your mouth is. And if all you're going to be is just talk and tell everybody how great you are and try to convince yourself that you're great, but not really do anything about it, then this is the wrong line of work for you. Trying to motivate and inspire people and create a movement and rally people together isn't going to work. You got to be willing to lose. There's an element of risk. And I think more men generally are more prone to, prone's maybe not the right word, but more likely to be willing to step into risk. But some of you guys are so risk adverse that if there's any sign at all of potential loss, financial, emotional, time, energy, you won't even move. And be honest with yourself about that. If you're scared to the point where you're not going to move, then just stop thinking about it and just drive on with your career and be happy and satisfied and fulfilled and good in that. And there are people out there who make great employees, for example. I personally have friends who are employed by organizations, and they get their annual raise and they clock out at 5:00, and that's what they want. And I don't think less of those individuals. But if you say you want to create something different out of your life, and you want to start a business, you want to start a movement, you want to inspire people, you want to create your own schedule and your own work and be creative like I do, that's how I feel, then know that you're going to get kicked in the teeth from time to time. And it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be time consuming. And there's going to be nights where you're not going to sleep, and you're probably going to drive your wife nuts because you're running all these ideas past her, and it's scary. Look, I'll give you another example. We're considering starting something new. I'm not going to disclose a lot right now, but starting something new, not to replace what we're doing here, but to add to what we're doing. And I am brokering a deal with somebody who owns a website domain that I want to own. And this individual wants a lot of money for it. And I'm very close to just pulling the trigger on it. 5 years ago, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pay $8 or $100 a year or whatever for a website. And now I'm thinking, well, okay, here's what they want. I can make that back. And you know what? I might not be able to. It might be a horrible investment, but it won't be, because I have faith in myself. And if it doesn't work out, we'll do something else. We'll figure it out as we go, like I was talking about earlier. But you got to be willing to put your balls on the line a little bit. And I'm willing to do that. And you'll learn. And gradually you'll make bigger risks, and because they're not going to be as risky. Investing in this is not as risky as it would have been 5 years ago, because I've proven some things. But it's all about experimentation, and I'm good with that. If it flops, okay, I learned something new. Yeah, I failed at it, but I also learned how not to do it, and got myself some feedback for how to do it next time. So guys, I want you to start. I'm not threatened by anybody who comes to me and says, hey, Ryan, I don't know if I should ask you. I'm considering starting something like you. And I don't know. My answer is go for it. You should do it. If you have a desire and it's in your heart and you have a desire to do something similar to what we're doing, then yeah, I think you should. Okay, so here's 5 tips that'll help. So do it. Start. Get it going. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun always. It's going to be fun a lot. It's not going to always be fun. It's not going to always be comfortable. It's going to be a roller coaster, man, of ups and downs and highs and lows. And some days you're riding on cloud 9, and other days you feel like you're wallowing in pig shit. Welcome to doing something meaningful. Let me recap, and then we'll close it out. Think about that this weekend, what you can do and how you can get started. Number 1, just start. All right, just get started. Number 2, don't plagiarize. I was going to say copy. It's not copy. Don't plagiarize me or anybody else. Mimic what works, and then put your own spin and your own flair on it. Number 3, know your lines. What lines in the sand? What are you going to talk about? What are you not going to talk about? What are you willing to be the bad guy about? What are you willing to piss people off about? Not intentionally, but just because this is what you believe and people see it differently than you. Number 4, as long as your heart and mind are still in it, don't ever quit. Just keep going, even through the bad days, especially through the bad days. And number 5, experiment. Give yourself permission to mess up. Experiment, lose some money, lose some time, lose some energy, because it is an investment. It's a tuition payment, and it will yield results. All right, guys, Let me know how it's going. Shoot me a message on Instagram. Shoot me your website or your podcast or whatever you're doing. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'll do my best to get back with you. It's becoming increasingly difficult as we continue to grow, which is a blessing and a curse, because I do want to talk with you guys and I value what you have to say. So keep going. If you have this idea and you have this goal, get after it. I'll help you the best way I can. But I think if you follow these 5 tips, it's going to get you off the ground and get you some early success, which is what you want. All right, guys, we'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.